Aboard this military plane, 3 elite soldiers, unaware of their destination, their mission, or what is at stake, their freedom. Summer 1992. The U.S. Navy officially announces the end of a once top-secret program, the Advanced Biological Weapons System. Military research on dolphins is abandoned. 100 flippered veterans have become useless and are demobilized. Congress, bowing to public pressure, demands the return of a first contingent of dolphins to their natural habitat. These animals have spent 30 years defending the security of the country. A strange 30-year story of some very special agents. The late 1950s. The Cold War is at its height. Behind the highly publicized space race lies other, more deadly rivalries. In the area of weapons, each of the 2 superpowers tries to gain ground on the other, on land, in the air, and at sea. To edge out each other, even slightly, no holds are barred. In the enthusiasm of the 60s, the idea of recruiting Marine partners into the military takes shape in the Navy. In Venice, California, Rick Trout, a civilian under contract to the Army, observes a school of dolphins near the shore.
I was a civilian trainer inside the U.S. Navy Dolphin program from 1985 to 1989, where I had a chance to see just how people would turn fun-loving animals like that into weapons of war. It's hard to imagine, but people would actually go out, take members of a family like that, capture them in a net, put them in a box, and begin to teach them some of man's dirty tricks. Early capture methods were often very dangerous to the animals. Many different methods, including one that could potentially kill an animal. And an unsuspecting dolphin would have almost like a harpoon thrown at him, only this harpoon would have a basketball net around it, into which he would swim and ultimately be entrapped and ensnared and lured back with a line on board. The military was certainly curious about how it is they swim so fast through the water, how they manage to find their way, find their fish using sonar, and in an attempt to understand the biology and the acoustic capabilities of these animals, the military did study them from the 1950s through the 60s.
At the outset, the Navy was interested in bionics, the study of an animal's ability to perform military operations. Where better to begin than by observing the incredible ability of dolphins to adapt in the water? Their skin is studied. The reason? To solve the mystery of how water flows all along the dolphin's body. The goal? To revolutionize the manufacture of missiles, battleships, and submarines. Enormous observation basins are built. High-speed cameras are used to analyze the dolphin's propulsion system. But the Dolphins do not divulge their secrets. The military never managed to create equivalent equipment. Giving up, however, is out of the question. Testing and experimenting continue. For American scientists, there is a new imperative: finding a common language between them and the dolphins. The animals learn to respond to 100 different commands, but only on orders transmitted by gestures. Interest is still high in Navy laboratories. Studies are conducted on the Dolphin's fantastic echolocation system, or sonar, a natural detection device which permits the animal to localize people or objects at a distance. The dolphin emits a high-frequency sound wave beam in the direction of the object, which bounces off the object and returns to a receptor organ located in the jaw. That is how they decode and develop a mental image. Thus, even with his eyes closed, the dolphin can avoid traps or any other obstacles.
The next step that was taken was actually to start to figure out if we could maybe change these animals from an animal who was studied to an animal who could work for us, and by using operant conditioning training techniques.
The dolphin is an athlete capable of diving more than 600 feet deep and can remain underwater for 20 minutes. In addition, he's a champion at detection. One question remains: once released into his natural environment, will the dolphin return upon capturing a simple sound signal?
This will be the first time that Buzz Buzz has been loose in the open sea since she was captured well over a year ago. As she moves slowly away, does she realize she is free? Now comes the crucial test. Will the months of careful training pay off? Will Buzz Buzz return when called, or will she, now that she knows she's free, keep right on going? Maybe back to the Gulf of Mexico, where she came from. Bob Bailey presses the buzzer. Buzz Buzz heard it. She's hesitating. Is she undecided? She's coming back.
(1965), the first operational tests. Tuffy the dolphin is part of the Sea Lab project and initiates research in deep water. Tuffy is highly trained and carries messages and instruments to a diving team located more than 200 feet deep. Victory at last. The Navy has proved that the dolphin is better than their best frogmen. Lack of visibility and currents are of no concern to him. From this point on, dozens of dolphins are recruited by Uncle Sam.
Basically, what was discovered and the conclusion is that we have the capability of using this animal in place of a diver. These are intelligent creatures who don't have the need of scuba gear or any extra equipment. They have a mind, they can be directed, and with certain pieces of hardware, they could become the SEAL team, if you will, of the military.
One of the greatest problems facing the Navy is the protection of battleships anchored in port areas. Due to parasites and shallow water, sonars, which are extremely effective on the high seas, are inoperable in port zones. Why not let the dolphin, who is accustomed to shallower water, take over? Thanks to his sonar, this is what he is able to see.
Dolphins would become, in the minds of many, I'm sure, the perfect weapon. In fact, that's what Mr. Fitzgerald proposed to them. When he came to the Navy in the 1960s, I have the perfect underwater weapon for you.
Sebastopol is a fortified city, bastion of the powerful Soviet Black Sea Navy. Secrecy and discretion are the watchwords, except perhaps on the 1st of May, traditionally reserved for demonstrations and parades. Do the children admiring the antics of these aquatic clowns suspect the truth? The celebration ends and the clowns return to their equipment and once again become Red Army killers. The Soviets had been interested in dolphins for a long time as well. From the early 50s onward, they captured, tested, and gauged them. Here too, dolphins are military conscripts. The Soviets conducted the same underwater experiments as the Americans. Their programs were identical. But the Soviets begin to specialize in acoustics and the language of dolphins. They carry out an astonishing experiment. They teach an exercise to one dolphin, Alpha, and equip his basin with a microphone and a telephone line linked to another basin 500 miles away, where a second dolphin, Beta, has been installed. Beta must perform the same exercise. Immediately, he questions Alpha by telephone and obtains the solution. In his office at the Defense Ministry, Captain Vitaly Urlanov carefully examines an American video showing military dolphins in training.
It was one step in our work with dolphins using a helicopter, but it was old hat. We were concerned with these questions in the early 70s, when we would throw the animal into an area with the goal of finding a submerged object or helping rescue someone in a specific place. Today, the trained animals are ready to actually carry out these missions.
The Russians were highly advanced in the area of finding immersed objects. They achieved 100% reliability with their dolphins.
For a long time, we didn't talk about our work with dolphins. For example, you probably remember the announcement made by TASS in which the state officially declared that we were not working militarily with dolphins and condemned the enemy for doing so. Believe me, military secrets exist in all countries. The United States too. Any country, capitalist or ex-socialist. They're necessary. We had secrets too.
Until 1994, the date the program was stopped, mysterious cabins constantly floated in the Bay of Sebastopol. They sheltered armed dolphin sentinels on a permanent basis. If an intruder tried to penetrate the icy waters around the bay, the sentinel would sound the alarm. Using the pressure of his snout to open the cabin, the dolphin would then attack. In this exercise, the dolphin merely tears the diver's nozzle off. But grimmer scenarios are easy to imagine.
Special equipment was used to protect important things, especially naval bases. On contact with a diver, or if struck from any direction, the mechanism would begin working. Either an alarm, which was placed here, or one here you could speak into, and an underwater pistol would go into action. Just once, I would like to use our animals in a military situation. Perhaps I just think like a soldier.
In America, hope becomes reality. Vietnam waters are the first test laboratory for the U.S. Navy's Dolphins. During this permanent war of nerves, resulting from the constant fear of Viet Cong ambushes, the Americans used Nemo, Maui, and 3 other Dolphins to spread terror through the thick waters of the Cam Ranh Bay.
The U.S. military was very fearful that Viet Cong, who were capable of swimming across their local rivers without the aid of scuba gear, would actually attach explosives to ammunition piers. Between the lack of personnel, SEAL team members to defend those piers, also the presence of sharks, it was decided to take Dolphins over there and attempt to see if that, the project, the swimmer nullification project, could be functional. The weapon that was attached to this nose cone device in Vietnam was actually a needle mechanism that on impact to a diver would inject CO2 into that diver and basically blow a human being up from the inside out.
At the end of the war, rumor has it that 4 Viet Cong divers were killed by Dolphins. In 1972, Navy expert Michael Grinwood confirms to Congress the training and use of military Dolphins in Vietnam.
There are not any killer dolphins in the Navy. The dolphins are never trained really to kill or to injure people intentionally. All of their job is to work basically like a guard dog does, for example. They look for the swimmer using their natural sonar. There has never been a lethal device used or even trained with dolphins, and there's never been an injury. And we've always laughed and kind of enjoyed the reports by some of the media of the numbers of Viet Cong swimmers who were killed. So, but there have been none.
Stories have come back from those experiences suggesting that the Dolphins killed 2 of our own, 2 U.S. servicemen, 1 merchant marine fellow who fell in the water at the wrong time, and a SEAL team member who was, again, wrong place, wrong time, and the animals weren't able to tell the difference between who was who.
But how reliable are dolphins? After Vietnam, the Navy hesitates for a long time about sending Dolphins to the front. Nevertheless, until recently, patrol boats in the port of San Diego were transporting these famous blue tents with Dolphin commandos inside. As soon as she hits the water, Yemi is ready for action, although she is waiting for her latest high-tech equipment.
The change from the Vietnam era was developed in the mid-'80s, and that change was a canister rather than a needle. And the canister served two purposes. It could, on impact, eject a .45 bullet that would certainly nullify a swimmer who might be trying to do harm to personnel or to hardware that belongs to the U.S. military. This device, the animal would carry around, would actually go up and hit or mark a diver. It would, on impact, detach the animal carrying the nose cone device away, the canister actually floating to the surface after impact, marking the area.
But in wartime, is it better to eliminate a saboteur or capture him for questioning? Doubts arise about killer dolphins. From this point on, the primary function of dolphin sentinels is to spot enemy divers and mark their location.
Good boy. Yeah. Throw him closer.
From the dawn of civilization, animals have participated in man's epic combats. Marine mammals arrived on the scene during the Second World War. Ever since, the American Navy has tried to train all sorts of animals, using each species' specific abilities for its own ends.
For the first time in U.S. naval history, a mammal other than man had been used to locate and attach recovery hardware on an operation, thanks to a California sea lion called Turk and others like it.
My name is David Reams, and from 1986 to 1987, for 2 years, I trained marine mammals for the United States Navy for classified projects. During that time, I worked with California sea lions, such as the ones we have here off the California coast living in the wild. The United States Navy has been training marine mammals since the early 60s. They prefer to use California sea lions because they found that they're able to get around on the land quite easily. You can keep them out of the water during transport, you can move them around as much as you want, and they're a little bit cheaper and less costly to maintain than dolphins. Before a Navy sea lion has to be trained for a military task of some sort, it has to first learn all the foundation behaviors. For example, it has to be trained to eat dead fish, it has to be trained to be used to being handled by humans, it has to be trained to wear a harness, stay on a station, it has to be trained to walk on a leash just like a dog.
Although the sea lion is a more practical subject from a military standpoint, there is one drawback. It doesn't possess sonar and therefore is impossible to use for research. The sea lion can direct itself towards a target which it knows and has recognized by a sound signal. Research on pinnipeds, however, has created a miraculous piece of equipment.
Once a sea lion's been trained to do all the basic foundation behaviors, it's trained to wear a mouthpiece in its mouth. On the end of that mouthpiece could be just about anything if you use your imagination. It's very similar to like a Swiss Army knife. It could be something as practical as, say, a screwdriver, or something as deadly as a knife.
Good boy, come on in. Get in the bow. Good boy, wait. You want a fish, huh? That's a, oh, good boy. All right, Joe, let's go find it. Here, buddy. Squeeze. Right here. How about a salute, huh? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Sea lion recruits are equipped with a simple bite plate installed between their teeth, which becomes their basic tool. It transforms these playful animals on command into mine markers or naval base guards. There are limits, however. The sea lion can only carry out one sort of task throughout his career. He's therefore a highly specialized agent. The Army often loses precious objects at sea, such as control panel computers during ballistic missile tests, shot down planes, or sunken vessels. Many such objects are too deep for sea lions, which can go beyond 200 feet, or dolphins, which can attain 600 feet. New recruits are necessary. The early 1970s. In strict secrecy, a true champion of the deep is preparing to dive. Morgan is a pilot whale, imposing in size. He measures almost 20 feet and can easily transport heavy loads more than 1,500 feet deep. From the Navy's standpoint, Morgan has another advantage. As a cousin of the Dolphin, he has his own sonar. He can therefore work alone in a dark and deep universe. He is at home in the lower depths. With such allies, the variety of tasks these sea soldiers can accomplish is enormous. Even the extreme conditions of the polar seas are no longer an obstacle. Within the confines of the ice floe, the Navy continues to recruit. They are looking for beluga whales, a close relative of the dolphin, but one accustomed to Arctic water. Thus, Muktuk and No Sea join the ranks. This time, the military seems to have solved all its problems. 20 years after Morgan, the base in Hawaii is still very high-tech.
40, stand by to come on site with your divers. Illustrate, this is a 40.
Today, Buster is going to learn how to become a cameraman. The apprentice spy's equipment is linked to the surface by a cable which transmits images. In return, the animal is piloted by a trainer. Orders are transmitted thanks to loudspeakers. A sound on the right, the dolphin turns his head and the camera pans the right side. It's the same for the left. Another sound orders him not to move. Still another is an order to return. A sophisticated technique for one of the most confidential aspects of the program, espionage. In 1973, a Dolphin loaded with electronic equipment was sent to Cuba to observe the defense systems of Soviet warships anchored in the port of Havana. Shortly afterwards, another Dolphin placed an acoustic spying apparatus on a Russian submarine to study its system of nuclear propulsion. At this point, the use of sea soldiers is on the road to even greater success. However,
in one case in 1974, 60 Minutes covered the question of what was the Navy doing with dolphins. On that program, it was discussed by several of the trainers who had been in a situation in Hawaii where a pilot whale had run off from a training session, simply carrying a harness that had a radio pack and antenna strapped to the animal. Unfortunately for that animal, it was discovered too late that a Russian fleet of submarines was passing by the Hawaiian Islands. The gentleman on 60 Minutes described the fear that reigned through the division that this animal might just trigger World War III by showing up amongst many of the nuclear subs, the subs that the Soviets had at the time. And in order to avoid such an incident, they simply destroyed the animal.
in the cold waters which bathe the Turkish coast, a white shadow suddenly appears. Fishermen, followed by curious onlookers, reporters, and local officials, all want to get a closer look at this strange visitor, a female beluga who becomes a local mascot. They call him Aiden, or Clarity. Aiden does not look fierce at all. Could he be one of those family dolphins who some believe are sent by their peers to establish good relations with humans? If so, he's a roving ambassador. Aiden has come a long way, a very long way, from the North Pole, more than 7,000 miles from here. Sometime later, Soviet trainers from the Sebastopol base on the opposite coast of the Black Sea request permission to recover one of their secret dolphins. Aiden's real name is Tishka, or the prankster, and she managed to escape her trainers. Surprise! Dolphin soldiers can and do desert. Numerous dolphin defectors seek human company, thus perpetuating the legend of the ambassadors. After returning to base, Tishka will once again part company with her trainers, only this time for good. Although the official announcement ending military research on dolphins is 4 years old, Rick Trout, on his return to San Diego, realizes that nothing has changed.
On paper, the idea of training dolphins to carry weapons and ask them to do the protection of both lives and very serious hardware like the trinuclear sub looks good, but in actuality, with the intelligent, playful creatures that marine mammals are, they would occasionally take these very serious weapons and put them in places they didn't belong. In the case of the sea lions, they would dump them and sink them in the mud in San Diego Harbor. We'd lose them for several days, and they would finally work themselves loose, and these classified weapons would be floating around San Diego Bay for anyone to pick up. In the case of the dolphins, it was not unusual for them to actually come up and, in a very playful nature, rather than go and hit the diver, they would turn around and hit the pontoon boat, the rubber pontoon boat, which, if it was actually a loaded weapon device, would not have a happy ending for the people in the boat.
Sea lions have a tendency to be cowardly. At the slightest suspicious noise, they do an about-face and frantically throw themselves into their trainer's arms. Fortunately, the animals are only carrying simulated weapons.
What actually was even worse is that occasionally dolphins would lie. They would, when supposed to be reporting whether or not a swimmer was in the water, they would actually start telling the wrong truth. They would come back, the tennis ball was there to say, yes, there is a diver in the water, and a paddle was pushed if a diver was not in the water. Well, there were many occasions that the dolphins who could do this with absolute accuracy would simply decide not to do it on any given day. And even when a swimmer was in the water at 1,000 feet, they'd come back and say, no, there is no swimmer. The swimmer would then be moved within visual contact, not only with the dolphin sonar, but people on the surface, and the dolphin's own eyes could see that there was a swimmer, and the dolphin would still insist on coming back, and they would almost, with a very, very happy gleam in their eye, look at the trainer and say, no, there is no swimmer in the water, almost as if to say, I'm not working today.
For the U.S. Navy, the Gulf War represented a new chance for on-the-job testing.
The Soviet ship Edinburgh crossed a convoy of Kuwaiti tankers on an American carrier escorted by 2 U.S. Navy ships. As a Pentagon representative stated, the convoy was entering the Straits of Hormuz. The Pentagon also confirmed that the American Naval Air Service is using specially trained Dolphins to locate mines in the Persian Gulf. Pentagon officials told the Associated Press that experiments with Dolphins have been going on ever since the Vietnam War.
The project of sending a group of bomb disposal Dolphins was finally rejected. 5 sea soldiers, 4 of them Vietnam veterans, were assigned to patrol a platform of combat divers. Was the Navy having doubts about the combat readiness of their marine mammals?
The civilian staff was asked to assist in some nighttime rehearsals to prepare the Dolphins to work in the Persian Gulf for nighttime duty. During the 7 nights that we worked this detail, not one night went according to plan. The Dolphins were supposed to detect us swimming from the piers. The situations often broke down because the Dolphins would run off and play with the local dolphins swimming in these waters. And in one case, the only time a dolphin came anyways near accomplishing the task, a female dolphin named Slan came up close to me, but as she got close, she threw the nose cone device off of her snout, came up, put her chin on my shoulder, and I was eyeball to eyeball with this dolphin, and I whispered in my regulator, "You're supposed to be a killer." At that point, I realized that this program did not work, and I confronted the director of the program at 6 o'clock the following morning and said, "This doesn't work, does it?" And he said, "We know that."
Actually, how does one explain the closeness of research and training basins to the San Diego yacht harbor? For a long time, top-secret military projects and yachts have existed side by side. Training takes place in full view of everyone. Suppose the primary goal of the advanced biological weapons system was to instill doubt and terror in the minds of the former Soviet enemy. Suppose it was just an enormous poker bluff. The only problem is the price animals with total confidence in their trainers had to pay for it. Soldier 677, spine fracture. Number 496, death during training. Recruit 497, cardiac arrest. And the list goes on. Broken jaw, fractured skull, missing in training. Soldier 493, death by drowning. Drowning? How do you drown a dolphin?
These animals basically went through experiences that were extremely dangerous and put them in harm's way. They never understood it. The 2 sea lions who died locked up in their cages because a boat overturned, they simply went down looking back at their trainers thinking this must be a new behavior they want us to do.
It takes many generations to domesticate a wild animal. Domestication is a genetic trait. Military animals do not possess it.
Using marine mammals as a weapon system is an idea which is flawed by its very design. Marine mammals such as whales, dolphins, and sea lions, and these harbor seals off the coast of San Diego, California, are wild animals, and as wild animals, they are extremely unpredictable, making them extremely unreliable for military-type operations. Would America want a military officer who refuses his commands on a weekly basis? Would they want a soldier who doesn't know the difference between an enemy and an ally? Would they want a submarine that has a mind of its own that would frequently go off and chase after fish? I think these answers are no. It would be just as ridiculous if the Army were to train chimpanzees to shoot combat rifles.
while the Russian Navy, for Western consumption, stages spectacular funerals for its sea soldiers and organizes pompous parades to demonstrate its strength. The Soviet regime is crumbling. The program is stopped for lack of funds and the animals sold or abandoned. Just before the chaos began, however, scientists were on the brink of success. They had built a machine which reproduced the same sonar as that of the Dolphin. Mental images could have been transmitted, making communication possible. Like many of his colleagues, sonar specialist Tongis Zorikov had to give up his research. The machine was not quite ready. What does the future hold for the former Red Army Dolphins?
I think that the rehabilitation process happened automatically, at least as far as the Sebastopol base was concerned. And the work having been stopped signifies that the problem didn't even exist. I feel that the ex-Soviet Union is now in such a difficult situation that if the need did exist, it wouldn't be done anyway. There are too many more important things to worry about. Still, I don't think it's necessary.
In the United States, the situation is radically different. The Soviet threat no longer exists. The military's Dolphin program, once made public, is very unpopular, a nightmare for the Navy's public relations service. Congress decides to call a halt to it and orders the Navy to send a first contingent of Dolphins back to their native waters. Jack, Buck, and Luther, our three soldiers, are on their final mission to show that they can relearn to live in freedom. The fate of the other Dolphins depends on their success. Rick O'Barry, Flipper's former trainer, spends his time today helping captive dolphins regain their freedom. The animals must redevelop a taste for hunting live fish. Too accustomed to being around humans, they must forget the human presence and restore their links with their own species. In a few weeks, Jack, Buck, and Luther will be ready for freedom. "18 months go by and the authorizations have not arrived. The Dolphins are still there. The military cannot seem to bring itself to part with them. Perhaps they would rather put them on hold in marine parks. The result is that the three Dolphins no longer understand what's expected of them. They grow bored and start fighting with each other. Jack is so aggressive, he has to be separated from his companions. Buck and Luther also become agitated. Time is passing, and time is running out. Rick O'Barry, trainer turned vigilante, is faced with a dilemma. Free the sea soldiers without authorization and thus break the law, or wait for official permission and possibly endanger the entire project.
We've had them out here for 11 days following the boat, very fast speeds, building up their muscles, getting ready for the day of release. They're both in very, very good shape, physically, mentally, they seem to be. We've taken blood tests. The blood looks good. There's no reason to keep them in captivity any longer. So we're going to free them, and we're going to free them tomorrow.
The decision is made, but speed is important if they are to avoid the Coast Guard. If they are caught, they'll be arrested. And if they're arrested, the Dolphins will remain in captivity.
This whistle that he's making, that's his real name. That's his signature whistle. His name is not really Buck. That's his real name. He's calling out, telling us his real name.
Normally, Buck and Luther should be released into the Mississippi Delta, where they were captured, in the dark waters abounding with fish and where they can find their original families. But acting illegally forces the men to set them free in the clear turquoise waters of Florida. What are their chances of survival under these conditions?
We've reached our final destination, I think. This is the spot. Many dolphin here, lots of schooling fish. It's a very good environment for them. We've been monitoring these dolphins for a very long time and never seen any shark scars on any of them. They seem to have a pretty good life out here.
In just a few seconds, the soldiers will return to civilian life at last.
Breath, we're going to roll. Stand by. Okay,
here we go.
Be nice then he might get up if it's be nice to see them both together before we leave.
They're finally back home. Dolphins at sea once again. Will Buck and Luther find a family? What memories will they retain of their tour of duty? What kind of wild dolphins will they become? Nobody knows. We can only hope. A week later, as Buck and Luther are begging for food, they are picked up and returned to the San Diego base. For them, their taste of freedom was just another training exercise.
A great deal of time and effort was put into trying to get two dolphins from here, Luther and Buck, from these pens back to their home waters. Unfortunately, the effort was at least a false start, and those two animals are back here. With some more work and some great hope, we will hopefully give some of these animals a chance to go back to their home waters in Mississippi.
Dozens of animals are still at American military installations, and new Russian bases are opening in Moscow and Utrinsky. It would seem that the dream of communicating with dolphins is not dead, nor is the hope of making them man's allies.